What it says is the live stream will begin soon. It will automatically check every 10 seconds.
Should be coming soon. It says it on my end. Starting custom streaming. Here we go.
Yeah, now it's coming up.
What it says is the live stream will begin soon. It will automatically check every 10 seconds.
Okay. Here we are. Welcome to the 9th Annual Thunder Bay International Film Festival, coming to you virtually this year with the latest in independent ocean and Great Lakes films and exciting interactive discussions with filmmakers like today's with our partners and friends at Great Lakes Now. The Thunder Bay International Film Festival is produced by NOAA's Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary, located off the shores of Northeast Michigan, and encompasses 4,300 square miles of northwestern Lake Huron. Thunder Bay is the only national marine sanctuary in freshwater in a national system of protected waters that stretches from the West Coast to the East Coast to the Gulf of Mexico to American Samoa, south of the equator. Our mission here in Thunder Bay is to protect an amazing collection of shipwrecks. And you can learn more about these historic shipwrecks at thunderbay.noaa.gov. And when the ice melts, we invite you to visit them by scuba diving, of course, snorkeling, or even on a glass bottom boat where you don't have to get wet. But now let's get to what you came here for today, and that's to talk to our amazing guests from Great Lakes Now. And currently we have just a couple guests, but we're hoping to have another one, Nick Austin, join us soon, so stand by for that. But first off, I would like to ask our guests, Sandra and David, to please introduce themselves, tell us what your role is with Great Lakes Now and with the film festival, and don't forget to tell our guests where you are coming from today. We'll start with you, Sandra.
Hi, Stephanie. Thanks so much for having us. I can't believe this is my third Thunder Bay International Film Festival already. I feel like I started this job yesterday, but it was just 2.5 years ago that I started at Detroit Public Television as the program director for Great Lakes Now. And we launched the monthly show later in 2019 and have the website with news and information about the Great Lakes. And we do events like this. So we're really happy to be a sponsor of the event, a partner on the event. And I am right now in snowy, for the first time this year, practically, Detroit, Michigan.
All right, David.
I'm David Ruck. My company is Great Lakes Outreach Media, and we do a lot of content for Great Lakes Now. And our relationship began at the Thunder Bay International Film Festival, 2 years ago now, I guess?
Yep.
And so I didn't realize you'd been doing this for 9 years. I think I've been involved maybe for 5 years now.
Yeah, even more maybe, David, I feel.
Yeah, it might have been.
I feel you
I
always
want to say
been a part.
2015.
Okay.
So maybe 6 years. Maybe.
Yes. A long time.
A while. Yeah, I mean, my company does a lot of work. I used to be a videographer for the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, and Nick, who's now in that role, he has a lot of content in this festival. My work focuses on mainly Great Lakes issues, but my work will take me all over the place as well, ocean and Great Lakes related stuff.
Wonderful. Great to have you here, David. And Nick, I'm glad you joined us. What we're doing is introducing ourselves and sharing what you do with Great Lakes Now and also where you are. Oh, David, you forgot to say where you were, unless I missed it.
Oh, I'm in the basement.
Good to know.
In Muskegon.
In Muskegon. Okay, Nick. Floor is yours.
Hi, yeah, I'm Nick Austin. I am a producer and I do voiceover work with Detroit or with Great Lakes Now. I also work in the Detroit area on WDET. I host a radio show there. I've been working with Great Lakes Now for, well, we've just cycled through a year right now, so that makes me happy. And I'm in the blustery conditions of the Metro Detroit area, currently in Royal Oak. But with Great Lakes Now, like I said, I do a lot of narration work, and with my work at WDET, I'm supposed to understand audio, but finding a working pair of headphones, I guess, is one thing I take for granted. So now that we have that together, I'm happy to be here with you guys to discuss what we do on the show.
Wonderful. So excited to have you here. And I will mention to our audience that there is a full program that you can watch of Great Lakes Now episodes throughout the entire festival. So we launched the festival last Wednesday, and it's going to run all the way through the end of January. Cool thing about a virtual film festival is you can watch it 24/7, and you can watch it over and over again. So if you just happen to love, I know you will love Nick's production of Island Basketball, you can watch it as many times as you like. And same with David's films. And I will have to give a shout out. David did mention he used to be the videographer for the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries. We have 3 full programs of short documentaries all about your National Marine Sanctuary System. And David Ruck was a big part of producing those, particularly the Thunder Bay sections. So those are all free programs. In fact, all the sanctuary programs and the Great Lakes Now programs are free for you to watch. Of course, we encourage you to watch all the other ocean content as well. Okay, enough from me. I'd like to ask you, Sandra, a question, an overall question about Great Lakes Now. Tell the audience really, what is it, and what's your purpose? What's your mission?
Oh gosh, can I have the hour? Can I just talk for the next hour about what we do? Because it's really super cool and a super fun job that I have. You've already met 2 of my colleagues, Nick and David, and they're just great to work with. And what we do is a lot of, we say that here's the tagline, a regional multimedia initiative, right? Well, what does that mean? We have, kind of our flagship project is the monthly show. Like you said, the segments will be shown here as part of the film festival, and we've showed some last year at this festival as well. So the show is produced out of Detroit, but it's a regional show. We've aired on 30-ish channels, PBS channels around the Great Lakes. We've aired in 7 states. We're adding California this coming week. From the taping of this, one of the stations in the Los Angeles area is going to carry, David, I don't even know if I told you this, but they're going to carry the episode Rivers Influence. So David actually has a piece in that called Damming Decisions, looking at the removal of a dam outside Traverse City. So there you go, David. You're going to be on PBS in California. So Nick too, because he voiced it. So anyway, the show is
multi-regional.
We're hitting the West Coast. Now we got to get an East Coast station. So
does that mean just LA filmmakers then?
Yes, you're now a California filmmaker. If anybody's got an East Coast connection, we'd like to hit that one too. The show also airs on hundreds of Canadian cable providers. This is something I learned recently, how many cable stations the providers carry Detroit Public TV to Canadian audiences. So that's good, because we do focus on the Canadian side, Canadian issues, sometimes Canadian politics, with everything we do on the show and the website, to really bring in that binational perspective, not even just regional. So the show is usually 3 segments. It's kind of magazine style. We've try to cover a variety of issues, a variety of topics, a variety of locations. We do a lot of digital content that goes along with that. So our website is greatlakesnow.org. We have daily news stories there. There's no shortage of news in Michigan, just even in the last 2 weeks related to water. Flint is still, of course, in the news as a really important water story of the decade, if not the century at this point. And Enbridge Line 5 continues to be a point of contention, and that is by no means settled to what that'll happen. Drinking water rates, drinking water quality, drinking water equity, and then just the science of the Great Lakes and the big issues that are out there around invasives, around the shipping economy, around how COVID has affected the Great Lakes economy, everything from the freight companies on the water to the communities around the region. So, we take the lens of the Great Lakes and we apply that to life in the region in a variety of ways. So the show, the website, events like this, we have started a series of Facebook watch parties around our episodes and with the Belle Isle Conservancy here in Detroit. So we're trying to reach to audiences virtually this year. And I think I'm tired. I've used a lot of eyeliner, but I think we've done a really good job of finding partner organizations and reaching people, where they are online now. And then we also have an educational initiative on our site at greatlakesnow.org. There's an education tab, and there's dozens of lesson plans that are tied to our content, our segments, things on our website, other partners. They're aimed at a 5th through 8th grade audience. But when the pandemic hit last year, we had our education consultant write a series of posts about how parents and caretakers and teachers and educators can translate those lessons plans to younger and older audiences as well. So with the virtual field trips there, and we'll be releasing another collection of lesson plans based on the last year of work on the show later this spring. So yeah, I mean, we do a lot, but you know, at the heart of it all, whether I'm working on a budget or processing David and Nick's invoices or talking about a show, at the heart of it all is the Great Lakes. And that, you know, at the end of the day makes it just a really cool job to have. And you know, I'm so appreciative of our audiences that love the lakes as much as we do and come see, read, hear, watch our work.
Absolutely. I mean, just your description of all the things that Great Lakes Now does. I had forgotten about the education opportunities there and resources. That's incredible. And what really stands out to me is the diversity of topics that you cover. You know, those big hard hitting issues, and then lifestyles. So really an important feature, an important resource out there for people that live in the Great Lakes. And the diversity of the topics, I think, is probably very rewarding for the folks that work there. And that brings me to a question for you, Nick. You've been there a year now. So tell us about working for Great Lakes Now and what you like about it.
Careful.
Oh, well, it's really interesting. What I don't like about it is Sandy, because she uses all of my eyeliner, and that is just unacceptable. But once you get past that, it's a fascinating, enjoyable experience, right? I grew up in the Detroit area my entire life, but I hadn't spent as much time in the Great Lakes as I probably should have, honestly. And so when the opportunity came to get involved with this, I looked at it not only as an opportunity to kind of tell stories, which is something I just enjoy doing and weaving narratives, but also kind of learn about the topic while working with it. And in that aspect, whenever I'm thinking about a piece that we're working on, or whenever I'm doing any narration or whatever is involved, I try to focus in on, hey, if you're not quite as in tune to what's going on in the Great Lakes, what's the hook in there for you? What's interesting about this topic for you? And weaving that into the narratives. You know, I kind of like to think of myself as, you have all of these experts here, and you have some people who maybe don't know as much. You know, what's the throughput that everybody understands? So in doing this, you know, I've learned a lot. I got to travel up. First time on Mackinac Island is because of Great Lakes Now, and that was fantastic. Learning a lot more about the water that I've lived around, and I've always had an interest in the Great Lakes, but really being able to get in and tangibly do something with it and do it in a narrative style, I just think is very interesting, while being able to, you know, focus in on what would an audience member in anywhere in the Great Lakes, or even if you're not in the Great Lakes, if you're in California and for some reason want to know about what's going on with Traverse City dams, you know, there's still something that can be interesting there with you. So it's really fascinating. You know, I never really realized how intricate, complex, and interesting all of these things were until joining in. So it's been a great opportunity to really tell those stories and dig into them.
That's excellent. And I think talking about your new California audience, being from the West myself, I think that's super important, because I grew up not really understanding the importance, the value, the vastness of the Great Lakes. So I think that's very, very important. And I want to know, when on your way to Mackinac Island, did you stop in Alpena, or did you go up 75?
we went up 75, but I've actually been to Alpena before, so that wouldn't have been that interesting. Although I was technically there for work, but you know, any opportunity I get to hit any of those cities that I haven't had a chance to frequent, you know, let's go. I got to get up to the upper portion a little bit more. We got to figure out some new segments for that when this snow passes.
Well, of course, as I invite you all every time, come up to Alpena. We're going to be doing some ice diving next week. David does spend a lot of time up here with our dive team, which is really exciting, and probably some of the best diving in the world. So, and snorkeling if you're not a scuba diver yet.
Can our host come ice diving? I'd like to send him under the ice next week. That would be fun.
Does he dive?
Speaking of new things,
I don't know. Does it matter?
Huh?
Can you just take him?
I'll do anything at least once.
That's right. We could just drag him along. No, you need some special training for that.
Oh, well, all right.
But David, so you've been working with Great Lakes Now, and it's so exciting to me that your relationship began at the Thunder Bay International Film Festival. That makes me very happy. There's been a lot of filmmaker connections made at this film festival when people are allowed to network in person. So David, tell us about what it's like for you in a little bit different capacity to work with Great Lakes Now.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I love the I love the topics that are the Great Lakes. I mean, from science to the human interest side to uncovering mysteries on how industrial or agricultural practices are impacting the Great Lakes. I love a good mystery, and I'm also and I work with a lot of clients that have very specific science or other types of stories. You guys have been one of them. The Great Lakes Commission's been one of them. Noah Glurl's been one of them. And so a lot of times, like what I'm able to do is sort of take the story that I was able to do for that client, talk to that client and be like, hey, can we kind of repurpose this for Great Lakes Now? We're going to probably add some narration, maybe add a little more context for a different audience, broader audience. So I guess it's like biting at the apple twice or whatever in that sense. But I mean, I find like all these stories are sort of important, and they're certainly important to whatever client or group that I'm working with, but then, making them and showing them to an even wider audience than they would reach, like just with their website or something like that. Because I think like a lot more people would find them interesting. I like the team there. I learn a lot. I work with a guy by the name of Rob, who's over there. He's a producer, and Rob, one of the first things Rob will do, I'll send him a rough cut. He'll send me like a transcript created by a computer of everything I just sent him. And then like we all go to town and like workshop, like, well, where do we add something? Where do we take something away? Where do we need some narration? Where can we add some context? And I just learned a lot with working with these folks about the craft, about the audience, about making better content. So, being able to focus on a variety of subject matter that I love and working with a great team of people who also love it and are good at working on that is truly rewarding. So I could keep going on and on about it, but it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So I love it.
Well, sorry, David, I was just with your passion that is evident in all three of your answers there, passion for the Great Lakes, passion for storytelling. And David, you brought that from your passion for national marine sanctuaries. And that's really evident, not only just in talking with you guys right now, but also in the programs. You mentioned, David, Noah's GLERL, which is the Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory. And there's many, many scientists there doing work around the Great Lakes. And you cover one of those scientific topics in one of your films about the harmful algal blooms, which is kind of a mouthful. So that's why we say HABs. So tell us about, I mean, that's such a big, complex topic, David. If you could continue talking a little bit about creating a film about that, serious, important topic and how you go about something like that.
Yeah. Well, that could be a film in and of itself, honestly, like the whole behind the scenes of harmful algal blooms. This is harmful algal blooms behind me here. Mm-hmm. That's Limnotech's boat. Limnotech frequently works with GLERL. A lot of water managers, water resource managers throughout Lake Erie have a Limnotech buoy sitting near their water intake that's letting them know like what the water quality is. And that's kind of how my journey in Lake Erie began. Was a guy by the name of Eddie Verheim, who is driving that boat in that photograph right there. He's currently the president of the International Association of Great Lakes Researchers. I had done a project for Ocean Conservancy. They wanted to tell stories about what NOAA was doing in the Great Lakes. We sort of settled on this water quality research, these sort of sentinel buoys that are out there to let water managers know, what's coming. I met Ed as well. And that was just kind of part of the story, of like, okay, we've got these buoys out there. They're telling us, what we can expect coming in our water intake. And then when that project was over, I was sort of like, well, what are these harmful algal blooms and what's causing them? And what are people doing about them? And so Ed, who kind of he's both in this film that I'm working on and and a consultant was sort of like, every time I'd cover a topic, like we'd look at the buoys, and then he'd be like, okay, now you need to go look at, the folks that are measuring nutrients coming through these different water inputs, like the Maumee River. I'd be like, cool, Ed, I did that, and I got all that information. Like, okay, now you got to go talk to people in policy and figure out like what are the politics around this issue. And so like I do that, and he'd be like, well, now this, did you know that this group in Chicago is suing the EPA? And basically, like every time I thought I understood the issue, Ed would always be like, here's another layer. And it just kind of kept pushing me and pushing me and pushing me until I finally felt like, I sort of understood this problem from as many angles as I could. And so through that project, it's a film called The Eerie Situation that's being edited by a MFA student from American University, where I went to school. Long story short, she couldn't do her project because of COVID. So it's like, I got a film, we got 100 hours of stuff. You want to edit this together? And so she's cut our 100 hours down to 93 minutes right now, and we're in the latter post-production stage there. But on that journey, start talking to Sandy and Rob about these sort of little one-offs that we could make out of some of the content that I had, and we had tons of content. So climate change and harmful algal blooms, agricultural practices, concentrated animal feeding operations, and harmful algal blooms. There's just so many different ways to like look at this on a micro scale or a macro scale. And I mean, like any film, I try to go at it, as a skeptic, like not knowing anything. And Eddie made that a lot easier because he kept on telling me like, you haven't figured this out yet. You haven't figured this out yet. But eventually you kind of reach a point where you sort of know, like, I can't possibly like learn anything more. It's like a diminishing returns. I have enough here to tell a story. And so that's where we're at. And we'll probably be releasing that sometime late spring, I want to say.
Okay. So the Great Lakes Now feature about that is a part of the film festival selection of films. So for the audience, please do check that out. And it's interesting, and while you're talking about all the different aspects of an issue that you need to understand and you need to know, you kind of become an expert on something, and you have to
totally
really know all of the ins and outs, if you will. And so another segment, Great Lakes Now segment, that is available as part of the film festival program is Island Basketball. And Nick, you field produced and narrated that. And so tell the audience, why is that story special?
Well, I did have some assistance from Sandy with it too, so I would be remiss if I didn't also mention her and her great understanding and even support for the idea of going up and really looking into island basketball. But the interesting thing I thought about that story is you got this tournament in a more secluded area of Michigan that people always think about for tourism, but forget that you have folks who live there on all of these different islands where you have different tourism. You have Put-in Bay, you have Mackinac, you have various locations, and you have these 4 schools who are small because they live in these more what are thought of as resort towns, even though they have bustling communities, and still they don't always get a chance to play, when they're trying to play other teams. They can be more populist. It's not quite the same environment. So why not have them all get together and have that experience? And I just thought it was interesting. I love basketball, so obviously there's an interesting story to tell. What are the logistics of making something like that happen? But then the real magic is not only telling the story of what's so interesting about, again, these kids who have an opportunity to really play basketball and commingle and meet other people who have a similar experience to them. That's not so common, but you also get to get people in who love basketball or have something interesting, teach them more about the islands and what's going on in these areas and what towns are like, right? Like, we were in Mackinac, for example, for this specific one, and one small story there is how they don't allow cars there. So you have kids you're either riding on the horse to get up there or you're snowmobiling out, right? And so, experiences like that some other people take for granted, you really get to learn about it through the story of basketball. So it's like basketball is the hook that gets you in, but you learn a lot about the culture, the community, the wonderful interactions they're having. And you learn a story about, you know, if you had a specific high school experience, what a different high school experience would be like. And of course, there's always drama in basketball. I mean, last second shots and, you know, who's trying to post up? Will anybody dunk in this game? You know, I'm interested in all of that. So when you put it together, it's just a fantastic story. And you get to learn about not only things happening around the island, but you get a good story about basketball too. Hoosiers, let's go.
Right. Awesome. That makes a good
team.
story. All the drama for sure makes a good story. And that leads me to a question that I'd like you all to address if you can, but I'll start with Sandra. How do you land on or decide what is a good topic? What is a good story? Do you just let the staff, you know, I want to cover this and they get to go hog wild? Or, I mean, I can think of a million different things, but I don't have the skills that you guys do to know that's going to make a successful program.
That's a really big question. Let me follow up to Nick's comments about island basketball there. There's also a Thunder Bay International Film Festival connection to making that segment. It was entirely shot by Zach Irving and Oliver Van Ash, who Zach is, yep. I don't know if he has anything in this festival, but he has in the past. And I actually met him at this festival 2 years ago. So he's been shooting for Great Lakes Now as well. And then Oliver is a videographer who lives up there. So, all right, how do we decide what's in the show? Sometimes, I'll be honest, it's what the heck can get done. I mean, you know, we had to produce a show every month, and there are dream projects we have and we'd like to do, and we'd like to follow this researcher out in the field for a year and see what they come up with. But, you know, we're not a 2-hour documentary that produces a film in 4 years. We produce a show every month. And so we have our dream projects, our passion segments that, you know, are a little more long range, but we also have to get the show done. So honestly, I know that's not like very sexy to say, but like a deadline makes it all happen. We also then, you know, we are Great Lakes Now. We are about the Great Lakes. We are about the communities in the region. We are about water, and that means drinking water, water infrastructure. One of our goals is to seek connections between the communities on the lakes. You know, how is the same issue being felt from Duluth down to Chicago and out to St. Lawrence? You know, is there a topic that we can find a very local story to tell that has all the good elements that Nick and David talked about, but that also kind of speaks to their region? And how can we make that hyper local for this person in action? And then how can we make the rest of the region understand the impact that issue has in their own community? We do a variety of topics that some things work better on television than others. Some things only, you know, really heavy policy stories, unless there's a good visual element and some action, you're going to read that on our website. But we try to make sure that we're hitting geographic regions. You know, I keep a map of all the locations we filmed so I can look and see like, oh, we're missing the North Shore of Lake Superior and the North Shore of Lake Ontario. We got to get there a little bit more. So that geographic diversity, and then the topics, you know, let's do some science. Let's do some culture around the Great Lakes. Let's do some fun stuff. Let's get our host out on, our host is Ward Detweiler. Let's send him out on the JW Westcott as it delivers mail to freighters in the Detroit River. We had some big plans before COVID wrecked all the field producing in 2020, but hopefully we'll come back to that. So I know this is a really long answer to your question. The short answer is, what can we do on deadline?
Right.
The long answer is, for the audience, you know, again, considering the audience, how can we make the audience learn something in a really engaging way? And while it may be about a place that they know, how can we show it to them in a different way or through some new eyes?
Although I think some of it might also be Sandy wanting to haze Ward, but, you know, putting Ward on a boat, that's a good time also. So who wouldn't want to see that? But kind of dovetailing off of that, you know, in my experience with media, since there is a lot that goes into these things, I always implore people, if you have a good idea that you think fits in with the show, pitch it, you know? And I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get done, but especially if you know an area, you know, better than I do, like about snail migration through the, you know, Wisconsin area or something that I just haven't really looked into, but there's a really good hook and you have the experts and you might even have some footage or know where we could get it, you know, pitch it. It could be an interesting story there. So it's all about like community resources. And, you know, when we're broadcasting on public television stations, I always like to think, hey, that public's in there for a reason. We're not only serving the public, but we're part of the public. We're part of these communities. So if you're in a community, you know something very well that you think would make sense, pitch it. And the more packaged ideas, you don't have to necessarily write all of it, I'm saying, but you know, the more you know, the more people you can put us in contact with, the easier you can make it to get on air. Those things really help and, you know, can go a long way in getting a good story and that we might not even have thought of.
I'm glad you said that. I think that it's really important. It really involves the audience, makes it truly interactive for sure. To bring it back a little bit, or take it out, I guess, a little bit to beyond the Great Lakes to our National Marine Sanctuary System, which I mentioned in the beginning, we have 14 sites encompassing over 600,000 square miles of America's protected waters, protecting cultural and natural resources. And so I want to throw it to David. And when you were with sanctuaries and covering all those, you know, varied topics that you could, how did you choose stories? And what was your favorite sanctuary to make films about?
Watching. I would say that you know, a couple times a year we'd have the opportunity rather to get to maybe 2 or 3 of these places in a year. And so there's the site that wants you to get everything that's ever had to do with the site. Here's the elected officials that have all been involved. Here's all our volunteers. You need to interview everybody. And then I'm like pushing back on like, okay, but what is the like 1 or 2 things we can do really well in like the 7 to 10 days we're going to be there. And there wasn't always like necessarily consensus on what that was going to be, but you know, usually what I'm looking for, what I did look for was some sort of charismatic individual who through their life, their lifestyle, the way that they exist, and the way they interacted with these resources, interact with one of these national marine sanctuaries, had a unique perspective and story to tell. And so in American Samoa, that was a guy by the name of Peter who just so happened to also be the boat captain there. But he was just such a, you know, he's got perspectives on spirituality and taking care of the ocean and being a mentor to these young kids, you know, things that tie really well into sort of things that the sanctuary is trying to do, but he's not doing it necessarily because it's a sanctuary. He's doing it because he believes in it. And it just so happens that, you know, the sanctuary values that as well. And so like worked really well together to tell the story about like, how did this guy become the boat captain and what's his philosophy and how does that make the organization better? How does that make the protected site better? How he is part of the sanctuary in that sense, you know? So it's like looking for these people that embody the spirit of that place. In Olympic Coast, you know, you're looking for, you know, stories of First Peoples, Native Americans and their interactions with things that maybe taboo, like whale hunting or, you know, certain types of fishing that they're allowed to do and why that's important to them culturally. Or in the case of Thunder Bay, shipwrecks. We told a story about Steve Kroll, who was at one point, you know, opposed to the sanctuary being established there and later became like volunteer of the year for the entire system. So looking for unique stories like that you know, these people will be a draw regardless of what the background story is. You know, we're going to talk about shipwrecks. That's great. But like Steve Kroll's just like a really interesting person to talk to. Peter's a really interesting person to talk to. And on and on and on. So that was sort of at least what I was looking for when we were trying to pick topics to focus on in the different sanctuary sites.
When you were talking about whale hunting, did you think of interviewing Captain Ahab? I hear that he has quite a tale to tell about that.
I think he's gone.
Ah,
Yeah.
don't let that
Reenactors.
prevent
We
you
need
from a good
reenactors.
story.
He's there. He's out there somewhere on the white
Yes.
whale.
Yes.
Well, and it really is the people that make the stories so rich, and bringing it back to the Great Lakes and the sanctuaries and the Great Lakes, making a little connection there. I did mention that Thunder Bay is currently the only national marine sanctuary in freshwater, the only one right now in the Great Lakes, but there are the community here has inspired other communities around the Great Lakes in Wisconsin and in Lake Michigan and also Lake Ontario, and really excited for those communities to eventually have a designation of new national marine sanctuaries. So there's lots more topics with sanctuaries for you to cover with Great Lakes Now, right around the bend.
Very, very shameless self-promotion there, Stephanie, but we'll take it. We'll take it. We love shipwrecks.
Yes, shipwrecks are fascinating.
Let's throw Russ Green a bone. Come on, that guy's been working his butt off over there in Wisconsin.
Yes. And Ellen Brody over in Lake Ontario. In fact, another plug for another partner of ours, the Snowtown Film Festival out of Watertown, New York, is actually, I think they're just launching in a couple days, and they're going to be showing a lake effect film package, which films all about Thunder Bay. So if you haven't heard of Snowtown, or if you haven't signed up, the Snowtown Film Festival is very cool as well. So we've been talking a lot about Great Lakes Now. I'd like to talk a little bit more about you personally. So just out of my own, all of you made funny faces there.
I like long walks on the beach.
Pina coladas.
Can I just get my dog and David can get his dog and we'll do that? It'll be like our text threads. Yeah.
There we go. So we'll start with you, Sandra. Like, how did you get involved in, I mean, you guys all have fascinating careers. It's fascinating to me. It seems very exciting. You get to go places, or you did before 2020 came. But how does one, I guess it's sort of a two-part question. How did you get going, and what drew you to such work? And then what would you say to someone, young or old, who is interested in doing something similar in broadcasting or filmmaking?
Ooh. So I came by my current job, by my last job, and also by good luck of a growing initiative. So, see, there's David's dog. That's Billy. I met her at the film festival last year as well.
She's beautiful.
My dog is locked away upstairs watching football pregame with my husband. So.
Are you trying to make people turn away, Sandy? Shush about football.
Yeah, right.
No. This is going to end before my Packers are on, isn't it? I'm hoping for an all Great Lakes Super Bowl. If we can get Green Bay and Buffalo in there, that is all about our show. Yeah.
That would be cool.
All right. Anyway, back to me. So my career has been all in journalism. I grew up in suburban Chicago, and my life has been the Great Lakes, honestly. I grew up in suburban Chicago. My family had a small sailboat, so we were down on the water all the time. And then we also did all of our summer vacations were northern Michigan, northern Wisconsin. My dad had gone to Lawrence, hence the Green Bay Packer fandom here, because I know I said Detroit, Chicago, so it's a little weird on the Green Bay Packer connection, but there it is. And so we always were up canoeing in the UP and northern Wisconsin and backpacking. And, I was at Mackinac Island once as a daytime tourist, and then once overnight, we stayed on a boat in the harbor, and like, what a different vibe on that island when the last ferry leaves for the night. So, I've been on boats myself across Lake Superior, fully across 4 of the 5 Great Lakes. So, and then my journalism career, meanwhile, I went to Indiana University. I interned in Muskegon. I lived not far from where David does now, in small world connections. And then my first real professional job was here in Detroit with the Associated Press. And then I worked at daily newspapers, weekly newspapers. And then in 2014, got into public broadcasting when I went to WDET, where Nick has the radio show, which is where I met Nick. And I covered Detroit's bankruptcy as part of a project called the Detroit Journalism Cooperative. That was 5 nonprofit media outlets, 3 in broadcasting, and one of them was Detroit Public TV. I had never worked in radio. I had never developed a website. I didn't know anything about municipal bankruptcy. What was new was the collaborative media, the collaborative journalism efforts to really bring the story of the Detroit bankruptcy, not only out of the courtroom, but also bring the stories of how that case and all the factors that led to it were impacting the community in Detroit and really Michigan as a whole, as we got into the litigation of the case. So from there, I worked at the public radio for 5 years, mainly doing digital broadcast connections and the partnership with the DJC. So got to know the Detroit Public TV folks really well. And in 2018, when some very generous funding from the Herb Family Foundation and others came in, created this program director position and the idea of expanding the station's existing efforts around the Great Lakes from quarterly documentaries to a monthly show, from some writers for the website, doing spot news and other things, to a network of freelance reporters, and really making the connection between the on-air content and the digital content. So that's why you find all our work for free on the site, on YouTube, stories that are appropriate for a digital platform that don't make it into the show. Because for everything we put in the show, there's about 15 things we'd like to have in there that don't make it. And so you can find all that on our website. So it's really great that I can bring in a lot of my background in media work, and then also, this new emerging idea of digital content and community engagement with partners, helping the audience find new ideas, new things, learn about the lakes. Everybody and the lakes themselves are just so powerful for audiences. So when people tell me they watch the show and learn something, and these are people who have spent their whole lives on the Great Lakes, like that's how I know we're doing something right. People are learning, people are watching, people are learning, and people are reaching out to us.
That's good. That's a definite sign of success. So how about for you, Nick? How did you get to where you're at? And what would you say to someone who was interested in following in similar footsteps?
Yeah, I forgot that last part. You can come back to me after David.
Okay.
I mean,
will.
you can take the time now, Sandy,
right.
but
that was long enough. Your turn.
It was a circuitous route also, I would say. I mean, when speaking to people who ask about my background and getting to where I am, I think the throughput that I always think of with the background is success is when preparation meets opportunity, right? So if you want a specific job, prepare yourself no matter where you are for that. And the reason I say that is in college, I was a failed football player who ended up also working on radio. And I have a background also, I played in the orchestra and band in college. So I was big into music, big into sports, and I always loved radio. So I worked in the radio on my college radio station. That's where I really got my training. Post-college, I actually went to law school and I became a lawyer. So I'm a lawyer. But an opportunity came up to host a music show. And I threw my hat into the ring because I have a background in music. I love music. I'm always the guy who's DJing the parties and introducing people to music. But I technically didn't have a broadcast, you go from college and now, this. And I'm also a full-time attorney. There's no way they're going to hire you for the radio job. But they did. You never know how that's going to work out. Shocked me, but very happy about it. And now I'm in year 11. Working at the radio station. So that's fantastic. Get an opportunity to tell stories through music. And I've always been interested in TV also. And when I was in college, I also tried to work a lot with our TV station there. And so when an opportunity came along to lend expertise, voiceover work to help out with Great Lakes Now, I absolutely took it. And when there was opportunities to do additional things, I say, hey, I could try that. I want to do that. Put me on a boat. Let me talk about this. I talk for a living on the radio. And so, when you put all of those things together, sometimes things click. You try to take every opportunity that you had to train up and get prepared. And I think if you do that, if you're interested in getting into TV, if you're interested into producing stories, just because you're not on TV now doesn't mean you can't produce a story. And then you have a reel. And when you have a reel, if you're applying for a job or if you're talking to somebody about, hey, I want to do this, I want to do X, I want to do Y, if someone asks me about that, I'm like, oh, do you have any work? So, now with YouTube and with opportunities to really just put stuff together, in my experience, if you want to DJ a set, put together a DJ set, say, hey, what you got? And then you never know who you meet wherever, if you're interested in it, you're getting a cocktail, you're grabbing a bagel, just start chatting people up. You never know what anybody does. And one day, if not immediately then, 6 months later, they're like, I remember I had that interesting person who liked cream cheese and lox on their bagel for some reason. I don't know why, but they really seemed like they knew what they were talking about when it came to TV. I'm going to invite them in. So you never know. But when that chance comes, I think you want to be prepared to pounce on it. So my background's interesting, but that's how I made my way to where I am now.
Oh, I love that story. That is really interesting. I did college radio as well at Montana State University.
Yes.
And I actually like listening to my old tapes, cassette tapes back then. But it is, and I went to school for English literature, and I'm a shipwreck archaeologist now. So yes, interesting, in different paths we all take. And you mentioned the being prepared for opportunities, and how inspiring for our youth, and what a smart tip. And speaking of youth, I have to mention our student film competition. The results just went live yesterday at 3 p.m. And there's a program within the film festival if you'd like to watch some really inspiring short films about, and these are junior high and high school students making these films about what freshwater means to them. So tune in to the student film competition. That'll be available through the end of the festival, so through the end of the month. But David, I'd like to hear from you about, what was the question again, guys?
Who are you?
Advice.
What's brought you here today?
Right. How'd you get to where you're at, David?
Well, I was thinking about this while everyone else was talking, and I wrote a few things down. I think when I was young, we used to have the Muskegon Air Show around here, and I thought I was gonna go fly jets or something like that. And I wanted to fly jets, and then as I realized I was terrible at math, and it was like, well, I like movies too, so maybe I can do movies, and someday I'll just use that as an excuse to fly in a jet or something like that. So I've always sort of seen filmmaking from the start as like sort of my excuse to go do things I haven't done before, which makes me kind of like a lifelong learner.
I love it.
I still haven't gotten the ride on a jet thing. That I'm sure that'll happen someday. So
I rode in a stunt plane covering the Toledo Air Show, David, so hang in there.
I have been on like, some of these little military old planes that, come around, they fly, whatever. But I haven't done I want to be in like a F-18 or something, Although the kid who was in my thesis film, I want to be an astronaut, he's now an F-18 pilot, and he was a high school robotics kid, leading his robotics team, and now he's like aircraft carrier rated. So I've at least had contact with these people. I got to meet a lot of astronauts that way. But I mean, that's kind of like my story, is like, don't take no for an answer. It's one of my pieces of advice. I got to film a rocket launch on the top of the vehicle assembly building at NASA Kennedy Space Center. Most people that work in that building have never been on the roof of that thing. I asked if I could go be on the roof when, it was good, this rocket was going off. And then it's up to them to figure out a reason why I can't, right? So I go about a lot of things that way. You never know, if something interests you, or you're like, that seems like a crazy idea. This doesn't just go for filmmaking, but like really anything in life. It's just like, have you thought about asking? Have you, you might get a yes, or you might get a no, but that, somewhere buried in that answer is how you get to yes, so don't take no for an answer is one of my pieces of advice. Have mentors, but don't follow in anyone's shoes. So, don't, a lot of people are like, I want to be the next Kubrick, or I want to be the next, Steven Spielberg or something like that. And well, why not be the first you? And in that, it's kind of like my other piece of advice, which is be aware of how you emotionally respond to an issue and throughout production. So being aware of how the subject you're covering is having an impact on you, because that is probably the audience is probably going to be having like a similar sort of experience when they're watching your piece, if you're aware of those things while you're working on it. That's kind of that. A lot of times, that's how I sort of settle on some of the main characters in the films that I work on. Is I'm feeling touched by them in some sort of way. Let's dig into that. Let's dig a little deeper. Why do I feel that way? And what kinds of questions do I need to ask so the audience can get to know that character like in the same sort of way? Or it can be, a thing that's happening. Like one of my core values is like justice. So environmental justice. How do I feel about the fact that the people in Flint have been poisoned by lead? Or how do I feel about the fact that people in Point Place, Toledo, are surrounded by toxic algae blooms every year? When I talk to them about their situation, I'm probably going to have an emotional response. And sometimes you can get focused on the technical side of what you're doing, which, you should be aware of that, but that should be second nature. What you should really be paying attention to is how you feel in that moment, and let that sort of dictate and drive how you approach what you're doing. And then certainly have other people involved. Like for me, and with the Lake Erie thing, it's a scientist at Limnotech, Eddie, who's also like bringing in other perspectives. Have you looked at it this way? Have you looked at it this way? And then you'll go through that process again of like, okay, now I've met a farmer who's approaching agriculture in a different way. Well, how do I feel about that? How's that making me feel learning about this? What don't I understand yet? I in terms of nonfiction storytelling, the best piece of advice is just to stay curious, figure out why issues are of interest to you. If they're of interest to you, maybe they're going to be interesting to someone else, and follow that path, and try and find. I'm at a point now where I've got a team of people that I work with. I have an editor. I've now got this other editor from American University who's working on this, feature film. I've got a sound designer. I've got a musician. I've got other people I can go to for, pretty much everything. So I don't have to do everything. And I got other people that I can throw something at who can, come at it from a slightly different perspective or tell me if I'm making any sense. Which usually I'm not. So, they'll fix that for me. Like Rob, he'll fix that for me. Start with projects that you can do yourself, meet other people that are going to help you along the way and make your work better. And, never, ever take no for an answer, and believe in the reason that you started doing it, and remember why you started doing it. Because this can be hard. These are transformative experiences when they're big projects. They'll change your perspective. They'll change your mind on things. You may look at the world a different way, which isn't always comfortable. And that's the beauty of doing this kind of work, I think.
Lots of good advice. I hope our student filmmakers are watching, but if they're not, this is recorded. And so all of our live Q&As are recorded and available throughout the end of the film festival. So Sandra, we didn't give you an opportunity to give your advice, which I know is going to be amazing.
I don't know about amazing, but yeah, no pressure. Well, yeah, I echo what both Nick and David said, in like definitely preparation meeting opportunity, and definitely keeping at things. I think also realizing that, the world's going to change. I went to college before the internet existed for those of us outside of NASA, really. So, my last 3 jobs have not existed before I had them. So, being able to have strong communication skills, strong writing skills, being able to take criticism, because when somebody tells you no, ask, maybe politely, ask them why, or, asking for help. And in our business, all of us get feedback on everything, and it's not easy to take sometimes, but you can really see, growth from that, reviewing your own work. And then I would also say, especially for students, I think people sometimes get overwhelmed. I was kind of chuckling while David was talking about being a filmmaker to have the experiences he wants to have, because that's me as well. Like I mean, now I do more management, but I got into this because I really didn't know what I wanted to be. But being a journalist let me have glimpses into other people's worlds and share them. And so, you know, it was a joke where for a while where like every 2 weeks I was working on a story about somebody else. I was like, oh, I want to do that. I'm going to go back to school. So I think you don't have to know what you want to be forever, but for the young people out there, like pick something. And because pick something you like, even if you can't see yourself doing it for the rest of your life, because it's going to lead to something else. You're going to meet people. I mean, I don't think Nick ever thought he'd be doing narration on a public TV show about the Great Lakes.
I can
But I knew
confirm
him.
this.
Yeah. And the Great Lakes Now show did not exist as a monthly show before my job was created by other people and I got it. So, I didn't set out to be a program director of Great Lakes Now, but the things that I have done and worked really hard at and continue to learn made me ready to do that. So I think, again, not being afraid you got to do something before you can do something else. So pick something where you can learn a lot from and meet a lot of people, which is harder in this era, but we still have events like this and make connections.
That's amazing. You may have noticed I was taking notes because I've got lots of plans for all three of you. And they do involve shipwrecks. They do involve shipwrecks. So we're getting close to the end of our time, and I have one final question for each of you. And I'd like to know what your dream project, if you can keep it focused in the Great Lakes, but you don't have to. If you could cover any story or create a film about anything. I mean, we've discussed the power of media in connecting people to the Great Lakes in particular, but connecting people to issues and places and other people. What's your dream topic, your dream story? Sandra, you go first. No pressure.
Okay, the serious one is finding a way that we could talk about Great Lakes policy issues and by extension politics in a civil way that relies on data and science, that makes it understandable for people, that furthers discussions and creates a balance, between opinions and viewpoints. So that's kind of the serious, I think that's much needed in this world of civil discussion that's based around policy rather than a lot of other things that have crept into our politics these days from both sides of the aisle. My fun one is to replicate, Stephanie, your Big Five dive, where you and another group of mostly women went scuba diving in all 5 Great Lakes within a 24-hour period. And I would like to do that on a little sailboat, like a laser, where we could drag it around and get in all 5 lakes in a 24-hour period. I think that would be a fun blend of the travel and being able to show people the different kind of personalities of the lakes as well.
I love it. I want to come. What was that, Nick or David?
You're gonna want to like haul around like a butterfly or something, right? You're not like
little laser, something like that. And dogs, could we get dogs to swim in the 5 Great Lakes all in 24 hours?
That's a good one. Okay, to you, David, and we don't have much time, so keep your answer to 45 seconds. What's your dream project?
Well, certainly a project that involves flying on a jet, whatever that is. One thing that I come back to a lot in my thinking is sort of first people's experience with the Great Lakes and Great Lakes spirituality. I haven't quite figured out how to approach this yet, but I want to do something that involves sort of, older perspectives on interaction with the natural world. Maybe this is, sort of a la Terrence Malick or something like that. I don't really know yet, but someday it'll like hit me like a bolt of lightning how I want to maybe start approaching this. But I think, we talk about science a lot. We talk about policy a lot. We talk about, very tangible things, this many fish in the lake this year versus this year, whatever. What about the spiritual side of how we interact with the water, the Great Lakes, and the environment that's on their shores? I just haven't quite figured out yet how I quite want to do that.
That's exciting. I look forward to what you come up with, David.
So do I, yeah.
Okay, to you, Nick. Tell us your dream project.
All right, Steph, I know that you got to get out of here, so I'll be really quick. While I was traveling overseas, I met people from the Balkans and also Nordic regions that apparently have gone on these trips to the Great Lakes to visit it, which I just found fascinating. What the heck are people overseas learning about this small group of people? Like, oh no, it's a pretty cool trip. So I would be interested in looking at folks from different continents and what brings them to the Great Lakes and sharing that connection with people.
Oh, I love that one. Those are all fun, good topics that I look forward to seeing.
$10,000 is what brings them on the.
Right. Well, Great Lakes Now and David and Sandra and Nick, this has been super fun and enlightening and inspiring. And I look forward to another live Q&A with Great Lakes Now next Sunday at the same time. But do remember and share this with your friends and your colleagues. This is recorded and will be available for all time. And enjoy the rest of the Thunder Bay International Film Festival. Next year, you're all invited to come up in person. So next January, we'll see you in Alpena.
And the new
there.
Great Lakes Now shows Tuesday.
Tuesday on Detroit Public Television. We have a watch party at 7:15. And I should say, we talked a lot about Rob Green during this last hour. You'll get to meet him in an event with the film festival next Sunday.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.